5 weeks before my wedding, my mother left a voicemail that cracked something inside me. Honey, we cannot make it. Ryan's yacht party is the same day. You understand, right? I am Evelyn, 31, biomedical engineer. The kind of daughter who got straight A's and still could not get a framed photo on the living room wall. My family had always treated me like a background extra in someone else's highlight reel. My sister Sabrina got the spotlight, the praise, the first row seats. I got leftovers and silence. So, when they chose a yacht over watching me walk down the aisle, I did not scream. I did not beg. I put on my grandmother's veil, and I married the man they'd laughed at. They had no idea who he actually was, but 4 million television viewers were about to find out. I grew up in Waverly, Virginia, one of those towns where everybody knows your lawn and your business. My father, Robert Harper, owned an insurance agency on Main Street. My mother, Elaine, considered herself the social backbone of the Waverly Country Club, which really meant she organized the annual golf brunch and never let anyone forget it. Then there was Sabrina, 3 years older, homecoming queen, knew how to work a room before she could drive. She'd walk into Sunday brunch, and every head turned. My mother would beam like she'd personally sculpted her. Me? I liked math. I liked silence. I liked the biology lab at school where things made sense, and nobody graded you on your smile. I got straight A's every semester. The night I brought home my first perfect report card, my father glanced at it, nodded, and said, "Good, but you should learn to talk to people like your sister does." I was 12. My mother decorated the living room with framed photos, a shrine to the Harper family's best angles. I counted once, 11 photos of Sabrina, solo shots, pageant shots, prom shots, 2 of me. Both were family group photos where I happened to be standing in the frame. I told myself it was just aesthetics. Sabrina photographed better. That was all. Then Sabrina got engaged to Ryan Davenport, son of a local real estate family, visible money, big smile, firm handshake. My mother redecorated the living room wall the week the engagement photos arrived. My 2 group photos came down. Sabrina's engagement portraits went up. I stood in that living room during Thanksgiving, scanning every frame. Not a single one had my face in it anymore. I did not say anything. I'd learned early, in my family, silence was not peace. It was a ranking. The pattern was not subtle. It was just quiet enough that I could pretend it was not there, until it was impossible to pretend anymore. I finished my master's in biomedical engineering at Georgetown. 2 years of late nights, caffeine-stained notebooks, and a thesis on cardiac valve modeling that my advisor called exceptional. I sent my family the graduation date 3 months early, circled it on a calendar, texted reminders. The morning of the ceremony, my father called. "Sweetheart, I have got a meeting with a major client. Cannot reschedule." The client was Ryan Davenport. I found that out later. My mother texted, "Migraine. So sorry, honey. Take pictures." Sabrina did not respond at all. I walked across that stage, shook the dean's hand, and looked out at the audience. Row after row of proud families, balloons, tears. And in the seats I'd reserved, nothing. Empty chairs with little name cards no one would ever read, except one. In the far left of the front row, my grandmother Estelle sat in her wheelchair, clapping so hard her rings rattled. 80 years old. She'd arranged her own ride from the nursing home 2 hours away. "I would not miss this if they set the building on fire," she told me after, squeezing my hand. That evening, I called home. My mother picked up, voice airy. "How was it, sweetie?" "I am sure it was nice. It is just a graduation, though. Sabrina did not even have one, and she's doing fine." I hung up and opened Facebook. There was my mother at a spa resort, arm around Sabrina, matching robes. Caption, "Nothing beats mother-daughter time." Posted 6 hours ago, while I was walking across a stage she could not be bothered to watch. That was the year I stopped expecting anything, but I had not yet stopped hoping. I met Julian Reed at a medtech conference in Denver. He was presenting on AI-assisted diagnostics, something about training algorithms to read imaging scans faster than radiologists. I was there for the cardiac device panel, but his session ran over into my lunch break, so I stayed. He spoke like someone who'd built things with his hands before he built them with code. No jargon walls, no ego. He wore a flannel shirt and boots that had actual mud on them. After the talk, I asked him a question about edge cases in valve imaging. He lit up. We talked for 40 minutes and missed lunch entirely. 6 months later, we were a couple. He drove a dented Ford F-150, lived in a modest rental outside Richmond, and described his work as a small software company, medical stuff. I did not press. I fell in love with the man who remembered how I took my coffee and read my published papers before I even mentioned them. When I brought him home to meet my family, my father lasted about 90 seconds. So, what do you do, Julian? I run a small company, medical software. My father nodded once, the same nod he gave my report cards, and turned to Ryan. Tell me more about the lakefront resort project. 12 million, right? In the kitchen, my mother pulled me aside. He seems fine. At least he has a job. But compared to Ryan, she trailed off and shook her head. Sabrina waved at Julian from across the room, said, "Hey," and returned to her phone. On the drive home, Julian's phone vibrated relentlessly. He silenced it. Just work stuff. I did not ask. That was how I loved, without interrogation, without suspicion. It was also the gap my family would later wish I'd closed. Julian proposed on a Tuesday in my lab, at 6:14 p.m. I was running calibration tests on a prototype heart valve sensor. He stepped in with 2 coffees and a small velvet box. The ring was a blue sapphire, not a diamond. You told me once you liked the ocean more than jewelry stores, he said. So I went with blue. I said yes before he finished the sentence. We decided on Willow Ridge Farm, a converted property on the outskirts of Richmond. Rolling fields, old oak trees, string lights between the barns. It was the place my grandmother Estelle used to take me berry picking every summer when I was small. The happiest geography of my childhood. I called my mother to share the news. Oh, congratulations, honey. What's his name again? Julian? Right. Well, good for you. A pause, then, oh, did I tell you? Sabrina just got invited to the governor's charity gala. Can you believe it? I sent the save the date card the next week, cream cardstock, hand-lettered with a watercolor of the farm. I mailed it to my parents, to Sabrina, to every relative I could think of. 2 weeks passed, no reply. Not from my father, not from my mother, not from Sabrina, not even a text saying, got it. I told myself the mail was slow, that they were busy, that they'd call any day now. Julian watched me check my phone one evening and said, "You do not have to wait for anyone's permission to be excited." I smiled and told him I was not waiting, but I was. I was still sitting at that invisible table, hoping someone would pull out a chair for me. 5 weeks before the wedding, I called to confirm. My mother answered on the 4th ring. There was music in the background, something jazzy, something expensive. Mother, the wedding. You got the invite? Yes. Yes, we did. It is beautiful, the little card. A pause, then a breath, the kind she took before delivering bad news wrapped in a ribbon. Honey, I need to tell you something. That same weekend, Ryan is hosting a party on his yacht at Smith Mountain Lake. Very important people. Your father has clients coming. Mother, it is my wedding. I know, sweetheart. I know. But the yacht thing is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And your little farm ceremony, honestly, you could FaceTime us, or send a video afterward. We'll watch every second, I promise. I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles went white. My father picked up the extension, business voice, clipped consonants. Evelyn, do not make this dramatic. Ryan's got major clients on that boat. I need to be there. You are having your thing at a farm. How many people are even coming? Your lab friends? Julian's parents from Wyoming? He chuckled. I do not want to sit on hay bales for 3 hours. I was quiet for 5 seconds, maybe 10. Long enough that my mother said, Evelyn, you there? I am here, I said. All right, I hung up. 20 minutes later, Sabrina texted, do not be mad, all right? It is just logistics. I am sure your little barn thing will be adorable. Little barn thing. Something shifted in my chest. Not anger. I knew anger. This was sharper, cleaner, like a bone finally snapping after years of bending. Clarity. For the first time, I saw the math clearly, and the numbers had never been in my favor. That night, I sat on the back porch. The air smelled like pine and coming rain. I made a list in my head, not on paper. I'd spent my whole career quantifying things, and some data sets do not need a spreadsheet. My master's graduation, empty chairs. My 25th birthday, a text from my mother at 11:47 p.m. Clearly an afterthought. The day I filed my first patent, a microsensor for post-surgical cardiac monitoring, I called home. My father said, that is great, kiddo. Hey, Ryan just broke ground on a new subdivision. Isn't that something? My engagement announcement. 3 weeks of silence. And now, my wedding, traded for a yacht party. I called my grandmother. It was late, but Estelle Harper did not believe in sleeping before midnight. Grandmother, they are not coming. A long sigh. Then, I know, baby. I know. Her voice was steady, the way it always was. I will be there if I have to roll that wheelchair 200 miles. But them, sweetheart, I cannot make water flow uphill. I keep thinking if I just, you've been just your whole life. You've just tried harder, just called more, just arrived with a bigger smile. And what did it get you? I did not answer. Exactly, she said. Now, go plan your wedding for the people who actually chose to be there. I hung up and called Maya, my best friend since college. Change of plans, I told her. No father walking me down the aisle. I am walking alone. Maya was quiet for a second. Good. You've been walking alone your whole life anyway. At least now you'll own it. I did not know then that the small, quiet, no-drama wedding I was planning would air in front of 4 million people. 3 weeks before the wedding, Sabrina FaceTimed me. She was poolside, a filter softening her face into something porcelain. Sunglasses pushed up, iced coffee sweating in her hand. You are not actually mad, right? Mother said you hung up on her. I am not mad. I just stopped asking. She laughed, that light social media laugh she'd perfected. Oh, come on. Do not go all dramatic. Ryan's yacht party is going to be gorgeous. Mother already bought a new dress. It'll be so fun. Fun for you. Evie, seriously, it is not personal. It is scheduling. And honestly, she tilted her head like she was about to offer career advice. Your little venue is cute, very Pinterest, but it is not exactly an event people rearrange their lives for, you know. I looked at my sister, at the carefully curated version of her that lived behind a screen, and I felt something close to pity. I hope you have a great time, Sabrina. Wait, are you being passive-aggressive right now? No, I am being done. I ended the call. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. Mother. Evelyn, Sabrina just called me in tears. She said you are cold and rude. What is wrong with you? She was trying to be supportive. She called my wedding a Pinterest project, Mother. Oh, do not twist her words. She's sensitive. You know how she is. Why do you always have to make things difficult? I could hear my father in the background muttering something I could not quite catch, probably agreement. I have to go, Mother. Evelyn. I hung up, and something settled inside me. Not peace, not yet, but the beginning of something that would eventually become peace. The decision to stop performing for an audience that was never watching. My father called the next morning. He used his boardroom voice, the one he reserved for negotiations and family members who needed correcting. Evelyn, sit down. We need to talk like adults. I am standing, Father. Go ahead. Ryan has a major deal closing on that yacht. Partners, investors, people who matter. I need to be there. This isn't about feelings. This is business. And my wedding is what exactly? Your wedding is... He paused, recalibrating. Look, I love you. You know that. But let's be realistic. You are having it at a farm. Who's coming? Lab coworkers? Julian's folks from Wyoming? He said Wyoming the way people say bargain bin. 85 people who actually want to be there. I am not going to sit on a folding chair in a field for 3 hours when I could be securing our family's future on Ryan's boat. Our family's future? I repeated. You mean your client list. Do not be sensitive, Evelyn. There it was, the word they all used, sensitive, as if noticing you are being discarded is a character flaw. Father, I am going to say this once. You are choosing a business dinner over your daughter's wedding. You do not need my permission for that, but you also do not get to call it love. Silence. The kind that hums. You've always been difficult, he said quietly. Then he hung up. I stood in my kitchen, phone still warm in my hand. Through the window, the afternoon sun was catching the tops of the pines, turning them gold. That was the last time I heard my father's voice before the wedding. The next time he called, his tone would be completely different, but that was still days away, and a version of me that did not exist yet. That night, I sat on the bedroom floor with a photo album I had not opened in years. There was one picture I kept coming back to, all 4 of us at the beach when I was 8. My father's arm around my shoulder, my mother laughing, Sabrina building something in the sand, and me, gap-toothed, sunburned, grinning so wide it hurt, convinced I was the luckiest kid alive. The family in that photograph never existed. Or maybe it did, briefly, before the math of who was useful and who was ornamental took over. I cried. Not about the wedding, about the understanding that I'd spent 23 years trying to earn a seat at a table that was never set for me. Julian found me there. He did not say anything at first, just sat down on the floor beside me, back against the bed frame, and waited. After a while, you do not need them there to know you are worth showing up for. I know, but it still hurts. Yeah, he put his arm around me, and I leaned into him, into the one person who'd never asked me to be anything other than exactly this, a woman sitting on a floor crying over a family photo that was more fiction than memory. Then he said, "There is something I need to tell you, about the wedding, about the company, some things I have not." I shook my head. "Tomorrow. Whatever it is, tell me tomorrow." "Tonight I just want to sit here." He nodded, kissed the top of my head, let it go. I would not understand until later why he looked so conflicted, or why the thing he wanted to say would have changed the way I understood the last 2 years of my life. But that was tomorrow's problem. Willow Ridge Farm the day before the wedding looked like something out of a dream I had not known I was having. Fairy lights strung between the old oak trees, wildflowers in mason jars on long wooden tables, a hand-carved archway where the ceremony would happen, built by Julian's father, a carpenter from Wyoming who'd driven 2 days to deliver it personally. 85 guests confirmed, friends, colleagues, Julian's parents, quiet, kind people who hugged me like I'd always been their daughter. His mother pressed a hand to my cheek and said, "He's never been this happy." Thank you for that. My grandmother arrived mid-afternoon, a medical transport van, a wheelchair, and Estelle Harper, 83 years old, spine like a general's, holding a garment bag across her lap. "Open it," she said. Inside, a lace veil yellowed with time, her wedding veil from 60 years ago. "Wear this. Only heirloom worth a damn in this family," she winked. "Back when I was prettier than Grace Kelly." I laughed and cried at the same time. Around 5, Caleb Porter, Julian's business partner and best man, pulled me aside near the caterer's tent. "Camera crews all set up?" Julian confirmed. I blinked. "Camera crew? For the company thing, internal footage." He smiled, easy and practiced. I looked across the field, 3 cameras, professional rigs, boom mics, a woman with a clipboard directing angles. One of the crew wore a jacket with a small embroidered logo I could not read from that distance. "Julian said his company likes to document stuff," I told Caleb. "Marketing content or whatever." Caleb nodded a little too quickly. "Yeah, exactly. Marketing." At the time, I thought the cameras were the smallest detail of my wedding. I was wrong about that. The morning of the wedding, I woke at dawn and walked the grounds alone. The mist had not burned off yet. The farm looked silver and quiet, like the world was holding its breath. I was barefoot in the grass, trying to memorize how this felt, this fragile, impossible calm, when I noticed the cars. 2 black SUVs parked at the far edge of the property near the service entrance. Tinted windows, drivers in dark suits leaning against the hoods, scrolling their phones. I found Caleb by the coffee station. "Who are those people?" "The SUVs?" He glanced over, unbothered. "Some of Julian's old colleagues." "Do not worry about it. They look like they are guarding a senator," Caleb laughed. "Tech people dress weird. You know that." By mid-morning, guests were arriving. A slow, cheerful stream of people carrying gift bags and wearing their Sunday best. But scattered among them, I noticed faces that did not fit. A silver-haired woman in a silk blazer, a man with a watch that caught the light from 50 feet away. They moved with a particular kind of ease, the kind that comes from being accustomed to rooms where everyone else is nervous. Julian introduced me to the woman. "Evelyn, this is Margaret." She was my mentor when I was first starting out. Margaret shook my hand warmly. "He's told me everything about you. The cardiac sensor work, brilliant." I thanked her. I did not ask what she did. That was how I operated. I took people at face value and did not mind them for resumes. After I walked away, Margaret turned to Caleb. "I did not hear it then." Caleb told me later. "She really does not know?" Caleb shook his head. "That is exactly why he chose her. Maya cornered me in the bridal suite while I was having my hair pinned." "All right, I need to ask you something." She closed the door, lowered her voice. "The camera guys out there, the ones Julian said were for internal company footage? Yeah? Evie, they have boom mics, a drone, grade A cinema cameras. One of them is wearing a badge." She pulled up a photo on her phone, zoomed in. The badge had a logo, clean, corporate, recognizable, Horizon TV. Horizon TV, The national network, not a marketing team. Maybe they hire freelancers from there, I said. Media people float between gigs. Maya stared at me. You are literally a scientist. Where's your curiosity? Getting married in 4 hours. Ask me tomorrow. She threw her hands up and went to check on the flower arrangements. I sat in front of the mirror, veil draped over my shoulders, grandmother's lace against my collarbones, and told myself it did not matter. Julian's company filmed things. Tech startups were dramatic like that. I did not need to understand every detail of his work life on our wedding day. Meanwhile, outside, I later learned the documentary director was standing behind the barn talking to his lead cameraman. Episode airs at 9 tonight. Live highlights go to social by morning. A tech CEO getting married at a farm? This is gold. He adjusted his earpiece. Make sure you get the processional from 2 angles. The network wants emotion. 200 miles south, on the shore of Smith Mountain Lake, a yacht was being prepped with champagne towers and string quartets. My parents were ironing outfits. My sister was choosing earrings. None of us knew that in 6 hours both events would collide on the same screen. I know what some of you are thinking. Evelyn, why did not you just tell your parents straight out? I did, dozens of times, in different words, different tones, different years. But there comes a moment when you realize you cannot convince someone to love you the way you deserve. If this story is hitting something real for you, if you've ever been the invisible one at your own family's table, hit that like button, not for me. So the algorithm puts this in front of the right person, someone who needs to hear it. Now, back to the wedding. At 4:30 inches the afternoon, 2 very different scenes were unfolding 200 miles apart. On Smith Mountain Lake, Ryan Davenport's yacht slid away from the dock. 60 guests, crystal glassware, a string quartet playing Sinatra. My father shook hands with investors in a new navy blazer, grinning like he'd just closed the deal of his life. My mother sipped Veuve Clicquot and posted an Instagram story, a slow pan across the lake, golden light on water, captioned, "Best night ever." The timestamp, 4:32 p.m. At Willow Ridge Farm, I stood at the end of a gravel path lined with wildflowers. 85 people in wooden chairs, string lights beginning to glow in the fading sun. My grandmother in the front row, veil in her lap, mouthing go. No father beside me, no arm to hold. I adjusted my grandmother's lace veil, took a breath, and stepped forward. 1 foot, then the next. Gravel under my shoes, faces turning, friends standing, Maya pressing her hand to her mouth. And at the end of the aisle, Julian, in a simple gray suit, watching me with an expression I had never seen from anyone. Not admiration, not awe, recognition. Like he was seeing someone he'd known for longer than one lifetime. I walked alone. And for the first time, it did not feel like absence. It felt like arrival. Behind me, 3 cameras tracked every step. A drone hummed somewhere above the oak trees. The crew worked in silence, capturing the kind of footage that does not need narration. On the yacht, my father was telling an investor, my older daughter married Ryan Davenport. You know Ryan? The lakefront project. Nobody asked about the younger daughter. Nobody ever did. I found out what they said later, secondhand, the kind of details that arrive like shrapnel weeks after the explosion. On the yacht, somewhere between the second champagne course and dessert, a woman in pearl earrings turned to my mother. Elaine, did not I hear your younger daughter is getting married today? My mother set down her glass, smoothed her dress, smiled the smile she reserved for questions she had not prepared for. Oh yes. Evelyn wanted something rustic, a farm, somewhere outside Richmond. She flicked her wrist. We tried to talk her into something nicer, but she's stubborn. And you are here instead? We had prior commitments. Anyway, she's marrying some IT fellow. Sweet enough, I guess. We are not sure he can afford much more than that barn. The woman in pearls raised her eyebrows but said nothing. Sabrina appeared at my mother's elbow, phone in one hand, champagne in the other. Evelyn's fine, mother. She's used to doing things solo. She actually prefers it. It is like her whole personality. She laughed lightly, performatively. My father stood 3 feet away, drink in hand, nodding, not defending, not correcting, just existing in the same gravitational field as Ryan's money, orbiting it like a man who'd forgotten he had a second daughter getting married at that very moment. Ryan leaned over to a colleague. My father-in-law's a great guy, best insurance portfolio in the region. Robert smiled like he'd been given a medal. I was putting on my grandmother's veil in a candlelit barn, checking my lipstick in a handheld mirror, Maya squeezing my hand so hard I thought she'd break it. They were clinking glasses on a yacht. And somewhere between those two scenes, a television network was preparing to air everything. The ceremony was simple. That was the point. No 1-2-piece orchestra, no choreographed entrance, just the two of us under an oak tree, surrounded by people who chose to be there. Julian held my hands and spoke without, "I do not have a big speech. You are a scientist. You like data. So here's my data. Every single day with you is better than the one before. That is the best trend line I have ever seen." The audience laughed. I laughed. And then I cried. Not the pretty kind, the real kind, the kind where your mascara gives up. "Did you just use trend line in your wedding vows?" I said. "Statistically significant emotional commitment," he said. More laughter. His mother wiped her eyes. His father put an arm around her. "I kept my vows short too. I do not need you to save me. I just need you to stay," he whispered back. "Staying is easy when you are the view." The officiant pronounced us married. We kissed. The crowd stood. My grandmother banged her wheelchair armrest and shouted, "Finally!" The cameras caught all of it, every angle, every tear. The drone circled overhead like a slow-motion witness. And in the middle of it, a detail that only I saw, 4 chairs in the second row, family section, wrapped in ivory ribbon, empty. I looked at them once, only once. Then I turned away. Those chairs would stay empty for the rest of the night. And I decided, standing there in my grandmother's veil with my husband's hand in mine, that this was the happiest moment of my life. I was not going to let 4 empty chairs define it. Not anymore. Not ever again. The reception spilled across the farm like something from a painting. Lanterns in the trees, music floating over the grass, people dancing on a wooden platform Julian's father had built the day before. My grandmother slow danced in her wheelchair. I held her hands and swayed while she hummed something old and beautiful that she could not quite remember the name of. Caleb stood up to give his best man's speech. He loosened his tie, held up his glass, and said, "I have known Julian for 15 years. I watched him build a company that is changing medicine. But he told me once, and he'll kill me for repeating this, that his greatest achievement was convincing Evelyn to go on a second date." Laughter, applause. Julian shook his head, grinning. Then I caught something, a flicker. Julian glanced at his watch. 8:47 p.m. His jaw tightened. He looked at Caleb. Caleb gave a small nod. Something was happening that I did not understand yet. Julian leaned in close, his lips near my ear, voice just below the music. "I need to tell you something. Now? The documentary, the camera crew, it is Horizon TV, the actual network. They've been following me for 6 months. The episode airs tonight at 9. I pulled back, looked at the cameras. The logo on the jacket, Horizon TV. Maya had been right. "Julian, why is a national network filming your because the company isn't small, Evelyn?" His eyes were steady, but his hands were shaking. "There are some things about Reed Biologics I should have told you sooner. About the scale." My mouth opened, closed. The clock on my phone read 8:52. 8 minutes until airtime. And 200 miles away, on a yacht on Smith Mountain Lake, someone was about to change the channel. He pulled me to the porch at the edge of the property, away from the music, away from the cameras. The air smelled like honeysuckle and cedar. "Reed Biologics isn't a small company," he said. "We are going public next week. The current valuation is roughly $5 billion. I hold 38%. The number hung between us like a held breath. 5 billion? Yes. I stared at him. The flannel shirts, the dented truck, the rental house with the leaky faucet he fixed himself, the way he once spent 30 minutes comparing prices on paper towels at Costco. "You drive a Ford F-150, I said. Because apparently that was the detail my brain chose to process first. "I like the truck." "Julian, 5 billion. I know. You told me you had a small software company. I know that too." He ran a hand through his hair. "I did not lie to protect myself. I lied, or I omitted, because you were the first person in my life who never looked me up, never Googled me, never asked about numbers. You asked me about valve algorithms and whether I'd read your paper on stent degradation. You saw me, the actual me." He paused. "I was terrified that if you knew, it would change the one thing I cannot afford to lose." I stood there, wind catching my veil, the faint sound of people dancing behind us. So, the cameras? Horizon TV, a documentary special. The Quiet Billionaire. It airs in. He checked his watch. 6 minutes. And the whole country is going to watch our wedding? The farm, the vows, all of it. I closed my eyes, opened them. I married you for free, Julian. That has not changed. He exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for 2 years. 9. Across the country, televisions tuned to Horizon TV lit up with a title card. The Quiet Billionaire, inside Reed Biologics. The opening shot, a man in a flannel shirt walking through a glass-walled lab. Voiceover. Julian Reed, founder of Reed Biologics, a medical AI company valued at $5 billion, is one of America's wealthiest and least-known entrepreneurs. Then the cut, a farm at golden hour, string lights, wildflowers. A woman in a lace veil walking down a gravel aisle alone. Today, Reed married biomedical engineer Evelyn Harper at a small farm outside Richmond, Virginia. No press, no entourage, just family and close friends. On the yacht at Smith Mountain Lake, the bar television was tuned to Horizon TV. Background noise. Nobody was watching until someone was. A woman near the bar tilted her head at the screen, squinted, tapped her husband's arm. Hold on. Is that Julian Reed, the tech guy? They just said $5 billion. Ryan turned, then froze. On screen, Julian standing at the altar. A close-up of his face as the bride approached. The narrator listed his net worth, his company, his portfolio. And then the bride filled the screen. A gasp traveled through the yacht like a current. My mother was mid-sentence when someone grabbed her arm and pointed. She looked up, saw me in my grandmother's veil, walking alone on national television. Her champagne glass trembled. My father pushed through the small crowd. He stood in front of the screen, jaw slack, reading the chyron. Julian Reed, CEO, Reed Biologics, $5 billion valuation. He did the math. I know he did. He was an insurance man. Numbers were his language. His face went white. And on the farm, I was dancing. I did not see any of it. I did not need to. The yacht fell silent the way a room goes quiet when someone says the wrong name at a funeral. My father stood 3 feet from the television, hands at his sides, watching a man he'd dismissed over pot roast get described by Horizon TV as one of the most consequential founders in medical technology. My mother fumbled for her phone, opened Google, typed Julian Reed. The results loaded like a verdict. Bloomberg, TechCrunch, MIT Technology Review. The same face, the flannel, the easy smile. The man she'd once called some IT fellow staring back from the cover of a magazine she'd never bothered to read. Sabrina materialized beside her, heels clicking fast. Mother, is that Julian? Evelyn's Julian? Be quiet, my mother whispered. She was scrolling. Stock projections, IPO timeline, board of directors. Margaret Vale, venture capital legend. The silver-haired woman Julian had introduced me to at the farm, the one my family would never meet. Ryan stood off to the side. He was not looking at the TV anymore. He was staring at nothing, drink untouched, doing his own math. His lakefront development, $12 million stalled, leveraged against loans he was already struggling to service. And the man he'd never thought twice about, the man whose father-in-law he'd borrowed status from, was worth $5 billion. $12 million versus $5 billion. The ratio was devastating. A guest approached my father with a grin that was half awe, half accusation. Robert, your son-in-law is a billionaire? And you are here? My father did not answer. Ryan walked to the bow of the yacht, pulled out his phone, and made a call. His voice was tight, urgent, private. The yacht party continued, but the air had changed. The champagne tasted different when the punchline was you. My phone started buzzing during our first dance. I felt it against my hip, a persistent, rhythmic vibration, like a second heartbeat. Julian felt it too. He raised an eyebrow. Ignore it, I said. We kept dancing, a slow song, his hand on the small of my back, the fairy lights making everything soft. But when the song ended, I looked. 14 messages, 7 missed calls. My mother. Where are you? You are on TV. Call me now. My father. Evelyn. Call me now. Sabrina. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Why did not you tell us? We need to talk right now. My mother again. I did not know. Why did not you say anything? Your family needs to talk about this. I love you, sweetheart. I love you. 3 words she had not texted me in over 2 years. And here they were, arriving not after my graduation, not after my patent, not after my engagement, but after a net worth figure scrolled across a television screen. I read every message slowly, the way you read a verdict you already knew was coming. Julian stood beside me, did not ask, did not suggest, just waited. I looked up at him, at the farm, at my grandmother asleep in her wheelchair, exhausted and content, at Maya dancing with Caleb, at Julian's parents swaying under the oak tree. Then I looked back at my phone. I typed 1 character, sent it to all of them. My mother, my father, my sister. 1 emoji. 1 reply. Then I locked my phone, slipped it into Maya's purse, and took my husband's hand. Dance with me again. We danced until midnight. I never checked my phone once. For the first time in 31 years, I did not need anyone to see me. I could finally see myself. By morning, the documentary had been watched by over 8 million people. The farm wedding segment became the most shared clip of the night. The internet did what the internet does. It found the seams. Someone screenshotted my mother's Instagram story from 4:32 p.m. The yacht, the champagne, the sunset caption, best night ever. They placed it next to a still from the documentary. Me, walking down the aisle alone, same timestamp. It went everywhere. Twitter, Reddit, Facebook groups for women over 40 who had opinions and were not afraid of them. The comments were merciless. Her parents skipped her wedding for a yacht, and the groom turned out to be worth $5 billion. I could not write this. She walked alone. Her grandmother was the only family there. I am not crying. You are crying. The mother's IG story is still up. It was not. My mother deleted it by 11 p.m. But the screenshots were already immortal. Back at the farm, the party wound down gently. Guests hugged us goodbye. Julian's parents left with a quiet, "We are so proud of both of you." I found my grandmother still awake, barely, in her wheelchair near the dessert table, a plate of cake crumbs on her lap. Maya crouched beside her. "Estelle, did you see the show?" My grandmother looked at her like she'd asked a silly question. I did not need to watch it on a screen. I was here. At 11 p.m. Another text from my mother arrived. "I am sorry, Evelyn. I did not know. Please give me a chance." I read it. I did not reply. Not out of anger, but because I was sitting in a field with my husband under stars full of something I had not felt in a very long time. Enough. I finally felt enough. When I put my phone down that night, I felt lighter than I'd ever felt in 31 years. If this story is making you think of someone, a mother, a sister, a family member who made you feel like you were never quite enough, subscribe to this channel because I believe real stories have power. And the next part, when my parents actually arrived at my front door, is something you'll want to hear. We are almost there. Stay with me. 1 week after the wedding, the doorbell rang. Julian and I were in the kitchen of our house, a simple 3-bedroom in a quiet Richmond suburb, nothing that screamed billionaire because neither of us wanted that. I opened the door. My parents, flowers, a bottle of wine. My mother's mascara already running. "We need to talk, sweetheart." I let them in. Not because I owed them anything, but because I was ready. We sat in the living room. Julian stayed in the kitchen, close enough to hear, far enough to let me own the conversation. My father spoke first, measured, practiced. "We made a mistake, Evelyn." "I will admit that." "Which part was the mistake, father?" I kept my voice level. "Missing my wedding? Or not knowing who Julian was?" The silence that followed was surgical. My mother jumped in. "We did not know he was. We had no idea about the company, the money." "Mother," I leaned forward. "You did not need to know who Julian was to come to your daughter's wedding. That is the problem. You did not skip it because you were busy. You skipped it because you decided I was not worth the trip." She flinched. My father shifted in his seat. I watched him cycle through expressions, guilt, defensiveness, calculation, before settling on something I had never seen from him, an attempt at strategy. "I understand," he said carefully. "And I am sorry. But going forward, perhaps we can start fresh." I was thinking Julian and Ryan might have some synergy, business-wise. There it was. 7 days after the most public humiliation of his life, my father sat in my living room and pitched a business connection. I let the word hang. Synergy. Like he was selling a term life policy instead of asking for forgiveness. "You just said synergy," I said. "You drove 3 hours to apologize, and you were already networking." My father's face reddened. That is not father. I analyze data for a living. Let me give you some. I folded my hands. In the last 10 years, you've missed my master's graduation, my 25th birthday, my first patent filing, and my wedding. That is 4 major life events, 0 attendance. He opened his mouth. The only time you've driven 3 hours to see me is right now, 1 week after finding out my husband is a billionaire. That is a data point, father, and data does not lie. My mother started crying. How can you say that? I sacrificed everything for this family. Mother, I am not saying you are cruel. I am saying you were not there. Those are different things, and I am tired. The room was still. Julian's footsteps in the kitchen had stopped. I stood up. I am not punishing you. I am just done auditioning for a role you never planned to cast me in. My mother pressed a tissue to her face. My father stared at the floor. I do not hate you, I said. I do not want revenge. I do not even want an apology because an apology that only comes after a net worth reveal isn't an apology. It is a recalculation. I walked to the front door and opened it. Not violently, not dramatically, just the way you open a door when a conversation is over and you've said everything that needs saying. Go home. And when you get there, ask yourselves, honestly, if Julian were an IT consultant making $60,000 a year, would you be standing in my living room right now? My father looked at me for a long moment. Then he took my mother's arm and stepped out. Neither of them answered the question. I closed the door and leaned against it. Julian appeared in the hallway, coffee in each hand. He did not say, "Are you all right?" or "You did the right thing." He just held out a mug and waited. I do not feel good about that, I said. You are not supposed to. That is how you know it was real. We sat on the couch. The house was quiet. Outside, I could hear my parents' car starting. A long pause before it backed out. The hesitation of people who'd expected a different outcome. Through the window, I watched them pull away. My mother's head was down. My father gripped the steering wheel with both hands. I'd later learn, from a cousin who heard it from an aunt who heard it from Elaine herself, what happened in that car. They drove in silence for 20 minutes. My mother stared out the window. My father kept his eyes on the road. Then very quietly, my father said, "We lost her a long time ago." I just did not realize. My mother did not respond. But she did not argue either. And for 2 people who had spent decades constructing an image of their family, that silence said more than any confession could. I do not know if that moment changed them. I do not know if it was regret or just the sting of being exposed. People are complicated that way, parents especially. Julian set his mug down. What do you need right now? Nothing. I just need to sit here for a minute. Then that is what we'll do. We sat there for a long time. The coffee got cold. The afternoon light shifted across the floor. And slowly, the tightness in my chest loosened. Not into happiness, not yet, but into something more valuable. Space. Room to breathe without performing. In Waverly, the fallout was measured in whispers and empty chairs. At the country club, my father's usual table in the dining room felt different. The handshakes were shorter, the conversations thinner. People who'd spent years listening to Robert Harper talk about Ryan's developments and Sabrina's social calendar now had a new question, and they were not shy about it. So, your son-in-law is Julian Reed, the Julian Reed, and you were on a yacht that night? My father had no answer for that. He'd spent 30 years selling confidence. Now the product was defective and everyone could see it. 2 insurance clients pulled their portfolios within a month, not because of the wedding directly, but because, as one of them reportedly told a mutual friend, if Robert cannot read his own son-in-law's worth, how's he reading my risk profile? My mother quietly deleted every social media post from the yacht. But the internet had already archived them. A local blog ran a piece titled "Waverly Mother's Yacht Night, when a $5 billion wedding is the party you do not attend." She stopped going to the club for 3 weeks. Then Sabrina called. Not to apologize. She was crying. Ryan filed for bankruptcy. The lakefront project collapsed. The bank's calling in loans. Everyone's comparing him to Julian online, and he cannot. Her voice cracked. Can you ask Julian to help? An investment? A loan? Anything? I sat with that for a moment. The sister who called my wedding a little barn thing was now asking the barn groom for a bailout. That is between Ryan and his accountant, Sabrina, not me. You cannot just, you, have access to, I have access to my own life. That is all I ever wanted. She hung up. I did not call back. The math had finally changed. 3 weeks later, Reed Biologics went public. The stock surged 40% on the first day. Financial networks ran the ticker like a scoreboard. Bloomberg put Julian on the cover. Flannel shirt, farm in the background. Headline: The Flannel Billionaire, Why Tech's Quietest CEO Built a $7 billion company in secret. In the photograph, I was beside him. Not in a gown or heels, in my lab coat holding a coffee, mid-laugh at something he'd said just before the shutter clicked. The caption read, Reed and his wife, biomedical engineer Evelyn Harper, at their home near Richmond. Our life did not change the way people expected. We stayed in the same house. Julian still drove the F-150, though he added a new one for the longer trips. I still went to my lab every morning, still ran diagnostics on cardiac sensors, still argued with colleagues about polymer degradation rates. The Georgetown School of Engineering invited me to deliver the keynote at their annual graduation ceremony. I said yes. Not because of Julian's name, because of my patent portfolio and my published research. I made that clear to the committee, and they confirmed it in writing. Your work on microsensor cardiac monitoring is what earned the invitation, Doctor. Harper, not your husband's stock price. I framed that email. My grandmother called the day the Bloomberg article came out. I saw your picture in the magazine. I cut it out and put it on the fridge, right next to my pie contest ribbon from '84. High praise, grandmother. Damn right. I thought that was the end of the story. The clean, neat ending where the credits roll and the scapegoat lives happily ever after. But 3 months later, Sabrina sent me a message that changed the shape of things. The text arrived at 2 a.m. on a Wednesday, long, unedited, no emojis. I know I do not deserve a reply, but I want you to know Ryan finalized the bankruptcy. It is done. Everything's gone. Mother and father blame him, and for the first time in my life, I understand what it feels like when they look at you and see disappointment. I read it 3 times, not because I did not understand the words, but because I was trying to how much of it was real. I am not asking for money. I am not asking Julian for anything. I am asking if I still have a sister. I set the phone on the nightstand, stared at the ceiling. Julian's breathing was steady beside me, the rhythm of a man who slept like a person with a clean conscience. 3 months ago, my sister called my wedding adorable, and then went to drink champagne on a yacht. Now her husband was bankrupt, her parents were scrambling for distance, and she was discovering what the second row felt like. I did not feel satisfaction. I did not feel pity either. I felt something between the two, a hollow, complicated ache for the sister I'd wanted her to be, and the one she actually was. I typed back, I am sorry about Ryan. I mean that. If you want to talk, really talk, not ask for anything, you can call me. Not forgiveness, not a door flung open, just a crack, and I held the key. A month later, my mother mailed a photograph. No letter, no explanation, just a new frame on the living room wall, me in my wedding dress under the oak tree, veil catching the light. On the back, in her handwriting, should have been up years ago. I did not reply, but I did not throw it away, either. 6 months after the wedding, I was sitting on the porch with my coffee, watching the morning settle over the yard. The azaleas were blooming. A cardinal landed on the fence post and stayed there, bright and unbothered, like it had all the time in the world. I did not hate my parents. Hate takes energy, and I'd spent too many years pouring energy into people who treated it like tap water, abundant, unnoticed, free. I simply stopped accepting a relationship where I had to pass a test to be loved. My new rules were simple. I answered when I felt like answering. I visited when I was ready, not when I was summoned. I did not explain myself, and I did not apologize for building a life that made me happy without their approval. My grandmother Estelle passed away 4 months after the wedding, peacefully in her sleep, the way she'd always said she wanted to go. No fuss, no machines, just lights out. Every anniversary I wore her veil. Not the whole thing, just a ribbon of the lace pinned to my dress. She was the one person who never needed me to prove anything. She just sat in the front row and clapped. That woman, Julian said once, had more integrity in her wheelchair than most people have standing up. I started a small scholarship in her name at Georgetown for first-generation female engineering students who did not have anyone in the front row. Julian came out to the porch that morning with 2 mugs. What are you thinking about? That I am happy, and this time I do not need anyone to confirm it. He sat beside me. The cardinal flew off. The coffee was too hot, and for the first time in my life, nothing was missing, not a single thing. People always ask me about the emoji. Why? Why not something angry? Why not a paragraph telling them off? Why not silence? Because anger means you still care about their opinion. Silence means you are still deciding. But laughter, real, unburdened laughter, means you've arrived somewhere they cannot reach. That emoji was not revenge. It was release. The sound of a lock clicking open after 31 years. I think about that night sometimes. The fairy lights, the veil, the 4 empty chairs wrapped in ribbon that no one came to fill. I used to picture those chairs as proof of everything I'd lost. Now I see them differently. Last spring, I went back to Willow Ridge Farm. The owners let me walk the grounds. I stood where the chairs had been, tall grass now, wildflowers pushing through. I realized I did not want those chairs filled anymore. I wanted the space. So here's what I'd tell you, if you are still listening. If you've spent years waiting for someone to hand you permission to be happy, to tell you you are enough, to show up, to choose you, stop waiting. Walk yourself down the aisle. Wear your grandmother's veil. Say your vows to the person who sees you. And if the people who were supposed to be there call afterward, panicked and breathless, wondering where you are, you do not owe them a speech. You do not owe them tears. You do not even owe them anger. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. Or one emoji, sent with a full heart and both hands free. I do not keep empty chairs anymore. I plant flowers where they used to be, and if they ever come back, really come back, not for the money, but for me, they'll have to find their own seat. I am done saving them one. Thank you for staying until the end. My story's done, but yours might just be starting. If you've ever had to draw a line with family, or if you are still caught between love and self-respect, leave a comment. Tell me your story. I read every single one. And if you want to hear more about the Christmas my parents tried to show up unannounced, or about the woman who married her boss's boss and her family only found out on live television, the links are in the description. Subscribe, hit the bell. I will see you next time.